Hello, everyone. In the previous lecture, we talked about the k-means clustering. In this lecture, we're going to talk about the hierarchical clustering. So let's revisit the general idea of hierarchical clustering and k-means clustering. K-mean clustering is a partitional clustering. You put them into different groups, and then you evaluate them by some criteria. Now, hierarchical is you create a hierarchical structure of the set of observations or objects. This is a point using some criteria. Okay, it's done in a hierarchical way. For example, this is a hierarchical way. It's called. You can do it in the bottom up. Bottom up is agglomerative clustering. That means you do it bottom up. Each 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 observation is a cluster, and then you keep merging them. So this is bottom up. You can also do it top down. Top down is you put all of them in one cluster, and then you decompose them into different clusters. So there are two ways to do it: top down or bottom up. Now let's discuss the bottom up, the agglomerative clustering. So each one of them is a cluster, but you see these two are very close to each other. So you put them then you're trying to merge those clusters. This is the first one you're going to merge because A and C are very close. And then you treat them as one group. You calculate the centroid or different kind of linkage function. And then you put these two, they're very close, the second cluster. And then the third, okay, you treat this one as one group, you find this BD should be one group, right? And then you continue to do ACBD, and then you have F. So now you have only one cluster. This is called hierarchical clustering, bottom-up clustering, number of clusters. You can do it every single one observation is a cluster. You have 6 clusters. And you can also have 5 clusters. You can also have 4 clusters, 3 clusters, or 2 clusters. This is a very popular hierarchical clustering is very popular. So the algorithm is very straightforward. You compute the proximity or distance matrix that each data point to be a cluster, merge two closest clusters, okay, and then update the proximity matrix until only a single cluster remains. The key step is the computation of the proximity of two clusters. Different approach can be used to define the distance between clusters that distinguish the algorithms, for example, single linkage or complete linkage and different kind of linkage. And we're going to get into that a little bit later. Now, this is the hierarchical clustering. Now, step 1, calculate the proximity. The general idea is like this, but just the proximity matrix calculation may be a little bit different. How to calculate them may be a little bit different. So calculate the proximity for all observations. Assume each observation to be a single cluster. Then identify two clusters that are closest to each other and merge them. If tie occurs, just pick one, break them arbitrarily. Then you recalculate the proximity matrix. And there are different type of hierarchical clustering algorithms. The variation is in step 3, recalculate the proximity matrix. Because now you have a cluster, right? How do you define the cluster and then the distance to another observation? Then there are different ways to do it, and then that distinguishes the algorithm. But we're going to get into details on that in later. So step 4 is repeat step 2 and 3 until a single cluster that includes all observation is formed. So now let's have a look at an example. Suppose you have 4 observations. Is it still the same observation? You have 2 coordinates, right? The first predictor, second predictor for each observation. Now, proximity matrix, this is a proximity matrix. You want to calculate the proximity matrix, just as a distance matrix. So this one is each one is treated as a cluster. The centroid is just itself, right? Now we calculate the proximity matrix, and we find that, okay, this one, the smallest distance is C and D. Okay, 3. So we merge C and D together. So merge two closest cluster. So here you find the smallest number. This is the smallest distance, right? Now A and B, they are still a single cluster. Now C and D become, you merge C and D together. Now you do the average. You see here, -3, you average is -1.5, -2, average is -2. So this becomes a single cluster, -1.5, -2. Now you do the proximity matrix again, you find that, okay, B and CD, they are the smallest distance. Okay, now 3.04. Now you put B and CD together. This is a merge, recalculate the proximity matrix, merge two closest clusters. Now A is a separate cluster. Now B, C, D, they are one cluster now. Now only two clusters, you merge them into one and then all done. This is called hierarchical clustering. So deciding the number of clusters, you see here, this is 4, this is 3, this is 2, this is 1. If people ask you for 3 clusters, then you can give them 3 clusters, and you can check 2 clusters, right? So this is hierarchical clustering. The final number of clusters are not decided in advance. The final number of clusters can be decided after running the algorithm by cutting the dendrogram at a certain level. So people may ask, what is a dendrogram? This is a dendrogram, okay? This is a dendrogram. The algorithm always terminates. The algorithm does not guarantee to generate the optimal clusters. In the middle of the algorithm, only 2 clusters are merged. Okay, then the merge cannot be undone. You cannot just undo that, okay? So this is the basic idea of hierarchical clustering in the bottom-up approach. And we are going to have an exercise dedicated to this one. And to understand more on the different ways to calculate the proximity matrix, please visit the next video lecture on hierarchical example and exercise. So this is the end of this lecture.